Sometimes I wonder, is being mentally enabled worth it? And I got to tell you, I've struggled with it a lot because I've had people in the system try to do some pretty shady things to me. And I'm not going to get into it on this episode because I'm not in the mood for getting sued in 2026. But anyway, so yeah, I struggle with that. And yeah, I know I'm physically disabled, but I'm mentally enabled.
Welcome to the Nick Speaks podcast, where we speak up, speak out, and speak loud for the disabled community. Tune in every Tuesday, and don't forget to subscribe. And now your host, Nicholas Comstock.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to this brand new episode of the Nick Speaks podcast, the podcast where we speak up, speak out, and speak loud about the issues that matter most to the disabled, and where we speak up about everything else in between. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am your host, Nick Comstock. I am so glad that you're with me on this Tuesday. You guys, I had an amazing weekend, and I'm about to tell you why before we get in the crux of today's episode. This weekend, we had about 85 people show up to my grandparents' 70th wedding anniversary party. They celebrated 70 years together on July 6th. And on July 11th, this past Saturday, we celebrated them with a big party. It was so awesome. Uh, three of my brothers were here and from out of town, my twin from Indiana, and then I have my oldest from Idaho, and then my second oldest from North Carolina, and then my grandma had two of her sisters come in from West Virginia. So that was a great time. And we had other people fly in from North Carolina. And my brother is also, my second oldest brother also lives in North Carolina. But I think we had another person fly in from either North or South Carolina. I'm not sure. But it was just a wonderful time. In 70 years, what an accomplishment. Today, people can't stay together for 70 minutes, let alone 70 years. But anyway, so shout out to my grandparents. Happy 70th anniversary. I will try to get a picture of my grandparents so that Kyle can put it up for those of you who watch the podcast on YouTube. So those of you that are listening, make sure you go out and check out the video version so you can see a picture of my grandparents and their 70th anniversary celebration. It was great because if you guys recall, back in episode 75, we did an AI takeover. And the reason we did that back in episode 75 is because we thought that we were going to lose my grandfather, because back at the end of last year and beginning of this year, we found out that he had colon cancer, and we thought that we were going to lose him three different times. So this was an extra special event. And this December, my grandfather will be 90 years old. So looking forward to celebrating that 90th birthday with my grandpa, and just happy 70th anniversary to my grandparents. I love you both more than you know. All right, you guys, in this episode today, we're actually going to go back in the disability realm for today's episode, because I want to talk to you about something. You know, one of my main taglines is that I am physically disabled, but mentally enabled, meaning my body is in a wheelchair, but my mind is not. And I am very grateful for my faculties that I have, because what I found out working in the disabled field as an advocate there are a lot of people in the disabled field who are not blessed as I am to have their mental faculties. They are mentally 5 years old or younger, and they're in these adult bodies. And I am so blessed to be able to say that, yes, I'm physically disabled, but I'm mentally enabled. I am so blessed to be able to say that. So when I share my heart with you today, I in no way want you to get the wrong idea from the things that I say. Um, so I'm gonna try to be very careful with the way that I word things, but at the same time, I'm gonna be very honest and upfront with you about how I feel. So as I said, my tagline is I'm physically disabled and mentally enabled. Physically disabled, but mentally enabled. Um, and like I said, I'm very blessed for that. And I thank God for that. But I got to tell you, it is a struggle to be physically disabled, but mentally enabled and still have people think that you're both, or have people think that because you're mentally enabled, you're not as physically disabled. And you're just entitled, you know, and all this stuff. And it's just so frustrating because I've looked up to God several times throughout my life, especially within these last several years that I've been on my own. And I've said, God, I wonder if it would have been better if I would have been mentally disabled too. Because, I have some members of my family even who don't treat me like a mentally enabled adult. They think that, yes, because I'm physically disabled and they've always, had to take care of me, that means they have to take care of my decisions too. And they have to, remind me to put a coat on before I go outside, or like not to put on a damper on this weekend because it was great. But the moment when I rolled into the basement where we were having my parents' anniversary party, we had it in their church basement where they go to church. And the moment I rolled into the church basement, I had members of my family saying, Nick, you can't go here. Nick, you're going to knock over these tables. Nick, you're going to do this. Nick, you're going to do. And it was just like, I'm not going to do that. I'm a very good driver. Yes, I'm legally blind, but I can still see enough to know that there's a table with a bunch of drinks and a bunch of food, and I'm not going to intentionally go run into to something. Yes, I have no depth perception. That means I can't really see curbs or bumps really well. At least I think that's what that means. Um, and so it was just really frustrating because, you know, it was the females in my family, my aunt, my mom, those type of things. And I love them dearly, but it was just like, come on, guys, like I can drive. They're like, yeah, but you're legally blind. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm not going to run into a table. Okay. Uh, a table that I know that has a bunch of food on it. And so it was just interesting because in that moment, I felt that, and I kind of feel this when I go home, period, that I immediately I come in, my parents and my family sees me, and the adult Nick goes away. The person who sits here on Nick Speaks every week goes away. The person who has um sorry, I'm getting emotional and I don't mean to, but I guess because it really like bothers me somewhat. The person who sits on Nick Speaks every week goes away. When I, enter home, wherever that is, whether it's at my grandparents or my mom's or wherever, and there's family around. The person who has spoken at a legislative session in Ohio goes away, and I go back to being Nick, the person who needs to be babied and coddled, and oh, we got to make sure Nick doesn't run into things. We got to make sure Nick isn't in the way, and it's just really annoying. And I finally went to my oldest brother and I said, I need brother permissions because my brother has always been the one to be like, hey, Nick, chill. The parents will chill out. You just do your thing, you know? And so I finally went to my oldest brother at the party and I was like, can I go see my grandparents? Because we had them set up at a table. And I'll be honest, there were a bunch of tables moved around. There were a bunch of tables there, but it was still a big enough space where I knew that I could maneuver safely. And but it's like I don't know what happens with the women in my family when I get around. And my aunt was like, we have to give you crap. And of course, I know that. And my aunt is my favorite aunt. And I say that for brownie points, but not only for brownie points, but for good Christmas presents this year. And because my aunt does give good Christmas presents, I'll tell you that. And so, right at the beginning, she said, we got to give you crap a little bit. And I know that, but like my mom and stuff, it's still like just like I said, the adult Nick goes away when I'm around family. And it's really annoying. And it's just kind of like maybe I would be better off being mentally disabled too. And I don't think this in only these type of situations. I mean, I think this when I'm with my caregiving team because sometimes I feel like my care, as wonderful as my staff is, gets neglected or my needs get pushed to the side because they're dealing with people that have more complex mental issues and behaviors and they need that attention. And so I feel like my issues kind of get put to the side if I have any issues. And they're like, "Oh, Nick, this is not really important. I have a guy throwing things at staff and beating people up, and you're calling me because, this is happening or and I'm not saying the staff is unkind, and I'm not saying that at all. They're not. They take care of my needs, but still, I feel like if I was mentally disabled at some point, my disability would be taken more seriously and I would be taken care of with more of a care and more of a compassion, I guess, instead of a well, you don't need me as much as this person, so you're gonna have to wait a little bit, type of thing. And then there's the uh, other side where because I am mentally enabled, people automatically think that I don't need all the help that I do. I've had people on TikTok when I talk about my caregiving journey. Like, I see you able to use your hands. Why can't you wipe your own ass? And I see you able to set up a camera and film yourself. So why can't you make your own food? And why can't you do this? And it's just like, it's not like that. And also, too, just having a disability in general, I am really, really super nice, probably to a fault, because it was drilled into me, Nick, you're not grateful enough, you're not kind enough. That was drilled into me growing up. I was told, and I'm sure there were times where I wasn't grateful and I wasn't kind, but it was so drilled into me that I almost, in some ways, feel like I've become a pushover so that people will help me, and so that I can keep people happy. Um, because now I'm told, Nick, you're too nice. But then I'm told, also on the flip side, you're entitled and I'm doing this for you. And how dare you treat me that way? If I start to push back on somebody doing something that I don't like. And so sometimes I really do wonder, is being mentally enabled worth it? And of course, I'm gonna sit here and say, yes, it is, because I get to speak up and speak out and speak loud on behalf of those that don't have the ability to do so. And they need somebody that's in their position to speak up and speak out and speak loud for them, because God knows some of you families won't do it. Um, so yeah, but it's just something that I struggle with, because I'm like, man, maybe I would be treated totally different in the system. Maybe I would be loved and not hated as much, because I use my mental capabilities to push back on the system and say, no, I deserve this. And no, I was told that this is what I can do. And I can say, it's not okay for a caregiver to come in 30 minutes late and I'm in bed waiting for them. There are people that wait on their caregivers every day to come in and they can't say anything about it, but I can. But when I do say it, I get backlash for it. And sometimes it's been pretty heavy backlash. Like, Nick, how could you do that? I thought we were brothers. I thought you loved me. Speaking of me and my caregivers, if I report them, it's like, why would you do that to me? You know? And it's like, wow, maybe I should be mentally disabled too, because then they could just get away with murder and then I would have nothing to do with it. And I wouldn't have to take the blame. Like, within the last couple of weeks, I've had to call my primary caregiver and say, hey, this is going on with staff. Even if I do say, even if I'm just calling my primary caregiver to say, hey, so this is what's going on with staff. Staff get irritated with me because they think I reported them. And it's like, oh my gosh, it's not that I'm reporting you. If you would do your job correctly, you wouldn't even have to worry about it when I call staff, because that you're doing your job correct. And so, and at the same time, just dealing with doctors and having to deal with all that as a disability, as someone with a disability, I'm not a disability. As someone with a disability, having to deal with all that, it's like, because I'm able to speak up, doctors may think, that I'm just making up these issues because it's all in my head and I'm just wanting attention. If I struggle with mental health, they say, oh, that's Nick. He just wants people to talk to him. So he's making it up and all that stuff. Plus, if I report something, even though they've said if anything's wrong, report it to us, they question whether I'm making it up just because I don't like the staff, or they question whether or not what I say is true. So it's like, wow. Sometimes it's like, is being mentally enabled all that it's cracked up to be? Because sometimes I think if I wasn't, you know, life would be great and I could just watch, Paw Patrol or Frozen or um whatever. Like my friend Ben, he liked to watch, he had the mind of a 5-year old, one of my roommates, and he's no longer with us, unfortunately. He passed away when I was living with him. And he liked to watch the movie Frozen over and over again. And then it was The Sound of Music over and over again, and he just didn't have a care in the world as long as he could watch his movies and listen to his music and go out for his outings. He was a happy guy. And sometimes I wonder what that would be like because I get criticized for speaking up, speaking out, and speaking loud. I've been told before that at one point there was a target on my back at the county because I went up the chain and I knew who to contact, and people thought I had the cell phone number of the disability director of the state, which I did not. I do now, but he's no longer the director of disability services. So his cell phone number is meaningless to me unless I just want to call and say hi. Um, so yeah. And the thing is, people in disability services say we want our clients to be able to say something. But the moment someone like me does who is able to say something, I immediately have a target on my back. I immediately hear, oh, if you say too much, eventually you're not going to have staff. And I'm just like, so then what's the point? But now it's like, damned if I do, damned if I don't. And now I've gotten to the point where, you know what? If they don't want to give me services, whoever it is at this time, and I'm blessed to have a good staff at this time. God has blessed me with a really good staff. But if I was still on that point, I would just be like, you know what? Damned if I do, damned if I don't. So I might as well just go ahead and start throwing darts. Hopefully, I'll find somebody on my side. But yeah, sometimes I wonder, like I said at the beginning of this episode, is being mentally enabled worth it? And I got to tell you, I've struggled with it a lot. Um, because I've had people in the system try to do some pretty shady things to me, and I'm not going to get into it on this episode. Um, because I'm not in the mood for getting sued in 2026. But anyway, so yeah, I struggle with that. And yeah, I know I'm physically disabled, but I'm mentally enabled. So why is it so hard for me to find a date on top of everything else? Like for God's sake, can someone just look past the disability? You know, I've said on this platform before, I'm attracted to men. And one of the main questions that I get, I have a feeling that I would get this question if I was sexually attracted to women and looking to date women, is does it work? And uh, do I have to? One person said to me on a TikTok live, I popped in and I asked a question. I said, would you date somebody with a disability? If not, why? And why is it hard for you to date someone with a disability? And they said, well, do I have to change Pampers? And I got to be honest with you, I liked that word better than diapers because I hate that word. I hate the word diapers. I tell all my staff, I do not wear diapers. I wear briefs. And the first thing that this person said to me on a TikTok live when I was asking them about would they consider dating a person with a disability or why would they not? They said, would I have to change Pampers? And then one person said, oh, I would just move that pamper aside and do what I got to do. And I'm just like, is that really what you're looking at? Like, okay, what if your able bodied partner got disabled? Is that the first thing you would say to the, oh, am I going to have to change your pamper? Am I going to have to change your diaper? Am I going to have to change your brief? Like, are we really that shallow? Honestly, I mean, I made a TikTok video just the other day. If you're not following me, follow me on TikTok at Nicholas Comstock. I'll have Kyle put it on screen. I made a TikTok video the other day and I said, you know what? I give up on trying to find love because I been trying to find it ever since I broke up with my ex-boyfriend several years ago and I haven't found it. And I found a bunch of fake profiles. And I was on a dating app recently, and one guy messaged me and was telling me he wanted a sugar daddy. And I'm like, I don't get the real sugar. I get the Splenda that the government gives out. Okay. I'm, I make less than $1,000 a month. So if you're looking for a sugar daddy, I'm not your guy, you know? But oftentimes I wonder, would it be easier for me to be mentally disabled? Not only because of the things I mentioned just a few minutes ago, but I wouldn't have to worry about dating. I wouldn't have to worry about finding love. I wouldn't have to worry about being rejected. Um, if I had the mind of a 5-year old, although Ben, who I talked about earlier, was a huge ladies' man. Um, and he was just a joy to be around. I'm thinking about him a lot today as I go through this taping. But yeah, I wouldn't have to go through and I wouldn't have the sexuality struggle either if I was mentally disabled. Um, so these are just things that I think about often when things get hard. Is being mentally enabled really worth it? That's what I think about a lot. And I can answer this question now and say, yes, it is. Because I know that this podcast is changing people's lives. I know that me sharing my life experience is changing people's lives. I know that me speaking up, speaking out, and speaking loud for the disabled community is changing people's lives because I see your guys' emails when you occasionally send them to me. And please send them to me at nickspeaksofficial@gmail.com because I love to hear from my TikTok viewers, my podcast listeners, my podcast viewers. So please send them to me and let me know that you're listening to this episode or comment down below and let me know that you enjoy my podcast content or my TikTok content, whichever platform you find me on. Let me know that you enjoy my content, or if you have any questions, let me know. Uh, and it just really gets irritating because being mentally enabled, I get caregivers who are like, I do all this great stuff for you, and then you report me or you call and say that I was late. The caregivers act like they are doing such a service for me, and how dare I say anything? And, and it's like, and then they're like, why don't you talk to me about it? Why do you have to call the boss? Well, number one, because a lot of caregivers believe that a lot of caregivers that I've had in the past have this belief that because I don't sign their paycheck, I'm not the boss. So if you have that belief, which I don't have that belief, if you're in my home and you're helping me live my daily life, I don't care if I sign your paycheck or not. I'm your boss. Okay. um, but I have caregivers who say, well, if I don't sign, if you don't sign my paycheck, you're not the boss. Okay. You're entitled to have that attitude and that opinion. Don't get mad at me when I call your boss and say, hey, there's an issue. And you're like, well, why don't you just deal with it with me? Well, if I was your boss, I would deal with it with you. But according to you, caregiver, I'm not your boss. So I'm not going to deal with it with you. That's what a boss does. A boss goes to their employee and says, hey, we have this issue. If you don't look at me as your employee or as your employer, and I know I don't sign your paycheck, but you're in my house providing services for me, because if I didn't have you, former caregivers and future caregivers, if I didn't have you helping me live my life, I couldn't live my life. So technically, I'm your boss. So don't get mad at me and say, well, you're not my boss, Nick, because you don't sign my paycheck. Okay, well then don't get mad when I talk to your boss who does. And don't come in here and be like, oh, well, I thought we were brothers. Or when I used to have females on staff, I thought we were cool. I thought I was your sister. I thought this. Why would you do that? Well, you said I wasn't your boss, and I didn't have a right to say, hey, I don't like what you're doing. So I called your boss. And a lot of times, too, can I just be honest? The reason why I don't confront a lot of caregivers on a lot of different things is I'm afraid of physical retaliation from them. So I would much rather avoid that and go talk to my primary caregiver than worry about somebody who's going to get upset and possibly physically retaliate against me because I'm in a wheelchair. I mean, and I haven't taken a self-defense class, and my muscles aren't really good right now. Um, so that's another reason why that's the main reason why I don't confront caregivers if there's an issue. Now, the caregivers that I have now, I have no problem saying, like, listen, don't touch my thermostat without talking to me. Or, um, could you please not come in late because I have other things going on and I need you to be on time. My team that I have now is wonderful for caregivers, and I love them. Shout out to Rekindle Living. And because they've completely rekindled my life, and so shout out to them. But yeah, it's just really frustrating being a mentally enabled adult. Where did I get that word? Adult. Being a mentally enabled adult because you got the people that say you're not disabled enough and you're faking it because you're so mentally intelligent. But you can clearly see that I'm in a wheelchair and I still need help with a lot of things. But because I'm mentally enabled, you doubt my physical disability. And a lot of you would just rather me shut up and not say anything so you can get away with the crap that you normally do. And I don't do that. So, yeah. So there are some days recently where I'm like, being mentally enabled is not all it's cracked up to be. So I just wanted to share that with you. It's a short podcast today. I don't know how long we've been on the air, but I just wanted to share that with you that uh crosses my mind more times than I can count. Because even though I'm mentally enabled, I wish a lot of my friends and family uh would respect that, and business associates, and they don't. Um And then I love it. Some friends and family are like, I'll come to them with something and they're like, you're an adult. You can do what you want. Well, then why do you text me about the weather? Or why do you freak out if I'm gonna run into a table? You know? um ju- just just something that really irritates me. So I thought I would bring it to the next week's podcast. Because I know there's a host of other mentally enabled, physically disabled adults who probably feel the same way. So, and you struggle with the same thing, family, friends, because you've got all your ducks in a row upstairs. You've got family and friends who think, or caregivers who think that you don't need much help because you got all your ducks in a row upstairs, but your physical ducks are not in a row, meaning your legs or your spine or whatever the case. And as far as dating, I'm just going to say this, for God's sake, and I think I said it before, but for God's sake, folks, men and women, look beyond the disability and look beyond the, hey, does your penis work? Like, look beyond that. That's so childish. And give someone in the disability community a chance, because people with disabilities love like no one else. I can say that because I love like no one else, because I've been taught through my disability, as much as I hate having it, I've been taught through my disability how to be loyal, how to love, how to appreciate, how to be grateful, how to have compassion. I've been taught all those things. And I think able bodied people have to go through a lot more in life to get to the I'm going to be grateful no matter what. I'm going to be kind no matter what. I believe able bodied people have to go through a lot more to get those characteristics tuned in and refined. But because those of us who are in the disability community have to go through so much more on a daily basis, and we have to depend on people on a daily basis, especially if we're physically disabled, we already get the point of, hey, be grateful, because if you're a bitch in the disabled community, nobody's going to want to help you. Although I don't know if that's true, because sometimes I feel like if I'm a bitch, maybe I'll get more done. Maybe I'll get more accomplished in the disabled community if I'm a bitch. Sometimes I feel that way. Um, but then I know that, you know, my mom has said sometimes you can get rid of, she said something to me the other day. Oh, it was when my grandfather was in the hospital. She said something about, I didn't think one of the nurses were doing what they should have done, and she said something about, well, Nick, you could kill um something, kill flies with honey rather than vinegar. And I'm like, what? No, I would rather just be have a mouthful of vinegar and say, bitch, get over here and do your job, you know? But but I guess it's easier to be sweet, but I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I've been too sweet and I need to be a little bit more bitchy, but then maybe people won't like me as much if I'm a little more bitchy and less sweet. I don't know. But yeah, I just wanted to share my heart with you as a physically disabled but mentally enabled uh adult, and share with you the struggles that I've been with. And I want to hear from you down below, especially if you're in a wheelchair, but you have all your faculties upstairs and you have no problem mentally. And when I say you have no problem mentally, I don't mean that you don't struggle with mental health, because I struggle with mental health. I struggle with depression every day. Um, what I mean by that is you're your own guardian, you're able to make your own decisions, and people still treat you as though, even though you're physically disabled, you're also mentally disabled, but you're not. You're just physically disabled. So that's what I mean. If you're struggling with the same things that I'm talking to you about today, email me at nickspeaksofficial@gmail.com, because I want to hear from you. And also comment down in the comments below if you're here watching on YouTube. And if you're listening on any of our platforms, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, be sure to give the Nick Speaks podcast a 5-star rating so they can know where to find the Nick Speaks podcast. Now, before we go, I'm going to say this. Next week's episode, I'm not going to tell you anything about it because I don't know anything about it. I've given Kyle Goodnight, my producer, complete control over next week's episode. You'll find out why when you come here next week. So do not miss the Nick Speaks podcast next week, because I don't know what's going to happen and neither do you. So you don't want to miss next week's episode of Nick Speaks. But anyway, give us a 5-star rating on all of our platforms. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe. Feel free to email me at nickspeaksofficial@gmail.com. Visit the nickspeaksofficial.com website for just speaking engagement information. And if you want me to come for speaking engagement, you can also email me there. And yeah, so do all the things, like, share this podcast, and I will see you guys next week for a very special episode of the Nick Speaks podcast. Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the Nick Speaks podcast, where we speak up, speak out, and speak loud for the disabled community. If today's conversation resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you never miss a new episode. You can find Nick across all platforms by visiting his link tree in the show notes. And please leave a comment to join the conversation. Until next time, keep speaking up, keep speaking out, and keep speaking loud.